So thanks for joining us, guys. It's the engineering technologist team, Curtis, Nick, and Stephen again with to the Summit of Apex. We're going to be talking more about what we started the conversation about last time, which is, we needed to change the conversation about how customers are able to move from requiring, the outcomes to be delivered and having those outcomes delivered for them using the Apex model. Now, in order to give you guys a framework as to how Apex can be interacted with and how these solutions can be dealt with, we're going to show you how the actual solutions are going to be handled. And we're going to do that through the Apex console. So our pilot today, Nick, is going to drive us through the console, and Curtis, one of our senior technologists, is going to have a conversation with all of us about how this changes for customers.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So I'm sharing my screen here. So I want to kind of preface this with a couple things, right? I mean, when we look at as a service models and we look at kind of the broad landscape of as a service, one of the major pieces of that is having an actual console, right? So if you think about AWS or Google, Azure, just to name some of the big ones, you have a console that you log into, and that's where you transact all of your services. And with Apex, it's really no different. How we handle those services from a delivery perspective is slightly different because you're factoring in on-premise models, right? So what I'm going to take you through is just a brief overview of the Apex console, how to kind of navigate it, what it's actually doing. And then also the second thing that I want to point out is that when we look at how we interact with our sales teams and your account teams, doesn't really change because you're still going to interact with them and they're going to be involved in this process, but how you actually initiate that is going to be different than what you're used to with traditional purchasing processes with your account team when it goes through sizing and quoting and all of that. So what you're actually seeing right now is the dashboard or what you log in the console. And you have a variety of options that are up front for you to go through and select. And then along the left-hand side, you have your normal menu tree of options where you have the catalog of services that we provide within the Apex console. You have a subscriptions drop-down, which allows you to view all of your active subscriptions, any draft orders that you have in process, and then also your order history. All of your billing, payments, all of that's handled out of the console, so you have full visibility into that as well. And then, of course, support engagement, right? So contacting support, any renewals that are involved, any service events. So like, we need a break fix done, right? It's all going to show up in here. Metrics from a, utilization or performance perspective are able to be viewed. And then any documentation regarding your services also is there in the support tab. And then administration, right? You're going to potentially have multiple users that are accessing this portal. And you want to give them, rules and rights according to their role and what they're capable to do. And then also understanding that you may have multiple sites where you have gear running at each one of these sites. You have visibility into those sites. All the details regarding those sites is wrapped up in there as well. And then, of course, your customer terms, your Apex agreements also in there. So it's a really simple setup. There's really not a whole lot to it. And as you kind of navigate through the portal, you kind of get used to where these things are. It's important to also understand that when we actually talk about product management, so actually hands-on management of the products, that's not done out of the portal, like maybe what you're traditionally used to in a portal model. This is all just transacting, keeping track of your various install base as it relates to the Apex services, billing, things like that. And then the actual product management's done in those element managers that you're typically used to, like vCenter, for instance, or out of the storage management consoles and whatever various products that you're consuming from the Apex portfolio.
So it's kind of where the cloud vendors, they might have a more single pane UI, but typically when you go from one platform to the other, you are using a different UI. RDS does have a different UI from how you provision network storage. So and it's kind of the same idea on how you're acquiring. Now, obviously, we'll go into the details of how each of these modules work in a later date. But can you show us how this kind of starts to affect customers' experience?
So let me interject then. So what you're saying, Nick, is yes, today, and we've got to preface everything with today because we're constantly evolving, right? We're wanting to make things better. We're putting more feature functionality into the console. And there's going to be certain Apex solutions that you're going to have some level of management in the console, and we would like to put more things into the console moving forward. Now, as a customer, I don't need to have already procured anything in Apex in order to have access to the console. I can get onboarded, so to speak, and be part of the console experience before I've even bought anything or I've decided to buy anything. So it behooves our customers, if they're even remotely interested in an Apex solution that we have or Apex offering that we have, that they can come join with their Dell counterparts and try to find a method by which they can get onboarded into the console so they can see and do everything that Nick is doing right here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this really is kind of the, what we've defined as kind of the path forward from a long-term perspective. And we see this across the industry. I mean, there's other players that are doing very similar things. And when you look at all of the public cloud vendors, they're all coming out with their on-prem stack, right? So this is really just taking a different approach, right? We're a hardware company, an infrastructure company that's been transitioning to a as a service model. And as the product evolves, as we introduce new offerings, having the ability to have fluidity of console to management is all things that are going to come in its time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's under the catalog? Like what's in the catalog today? I mean,
yeah. So if we click on the catalog, just like we discussed in the first video of the series, right? We have our cloud services offerings, so our hybrid cloud and private cloud. We have our data storage services and then our Apex custom solutions. So you can see all of those offerings here. When you dive into each one of these, you're going to have, a unique process of selection and sizing and so on and so forth. But it's all, launched out of here. And then as you scroll down, and you'll see this continue to grow as well, you'll have additional use cases that would reside on these various services. So for instance, virtual workspaces on Apex Cloud Services would be, a solution that we offer, taking VDI and layering it on cloud services. So you'll see this catalog begin to grow as well of different use cases that you can.
So I'd like to offer up something fun, right? So we're doing this video series and we're taking it in whatever direction we feel is necessary, but why not give our listeners and our viewers an opportunity to specify maybe what they want our deep dive to be next to? Should we deep dive into Apex Data Storage Services? Should we deep dive into cloud services? What should we deep dive into? Please post a comment below under the video and then, we'll take it from there.
And with some of the use cases, Nick, it kind of sounds like with a console like this, you start to break down some of the weirdness when it comes to building, say, a VDI solution, having to find a reference architecture, then taking that reference architecture to figure out what hardware you're going to put that reference architecture on, what software that's going to be on. Rather than figuring out that minutia, we say, here is the solution. What do you need? We'll figure out the details. You consume the service.
Yeah, yeah, it really does follow that model of the outcome-based approach, right? When you look at it, reference architectures are great for, particular workloads. They really help us kind of derive, what the goal is and give us some framework to work in. But, with Apex, we really get you, 30, 40% of the way there because we cut out all of the hardware, architecture conversations because you just put in your requirement and then we've already done all that for you. And then you can focus on the layering on the services on top of that, which is the other, 60% of the solution. So
Nick, I know that was super duper fast, and there's obviously a lot of different pieces of information that's in here. Why don't we stop sharing for right now so we can get all of us back on the screen? I'll go ahead and summarize it, right? So in this Apex console, we can do a multitude of different things, right? A circle of life, so to speak. So we should be able to, or customers should be able to discover from the catalog of the various services that we offer. They can see the self-service process and take part in that self-service process. They can monitor the health and performance of any of their Apex solutions that they have, or the Apex resources. They can decide whether or not they want to grow or expand, all from within the console. So the console is like the centralized home for all things that they want to do, trying to make things as fast and as easy and simple as possible.
Absolutely. Yep, that's what we're going for.
Steven, you're on mute, buddy.
I mean, that's classic, of course. And as we go forward, we're going to start digging deeper into the more technical aspects of the conversation, because that's what we do as engineering technologists. But this sets the framework for you to understand how Apex is going to be interacted with, right? So when we start having conversations about application requirements, about sizing, about what you're going to need from a outcome perspective, this is what's driving that, and will help you understand how you architect around it. Thank you for your time, and join us next time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.